and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. No test this weekend, but we've got NPC semi-finals and, of course, the Northern Tour is starting to go into next week. The All Blacks take off this week for Japan. So we're going to get in big time into what touring looks like. So it's very rare that you have a 5-week tour in the modern day and age outside of World Cup windows. How do you make it successful? How does off-field contribute to on-field? How do you relate with coaches and other players? And how does it all work to make sure that that tour is successful for everyone, both on and off the field? We'll get into that. The Black Ferns, of course, came back really hard against France. So that last test match of, I suppose, international footy that's booked in for the moment until next year's World Cup. What does that mean? What do they need to work on? Where do they need to go from there? James O'Connor signs with the Crusaders, causes a bit of an uproar considering the bloke is one of the best talents that's come out of the Southern Hemisphere in the last couple of decades. Still, people aren't happy. We'll talk about the positives and negatives of bringing foreign players into New Zealand Super Rugby setups and, of course, the NPC semi-finals and your questions. Lots of your questions today as well, so we'll get into those for the chance to get a Players Sports Ball. As always, joining me in studio, James Parsons. Jipper, big weekend of NPC quarterfinals, just be exhausted.
Oh, it was a great weekend though. Geez, I did not see that Taranaki result coming. I sort of alluded to the Canterbury one was possible, but again, I didn't think it would be that clinical. Yeah,
really, really clinical. A few of your mates in that Canterbury side, Bryn, but boy, they turned it on.
Yeah, I think they did. They had good timing with those boys coming back, especially in the forward pack. And I think with the experience that they had on the bench, with obviously Willie Hines coming back, Mitchell Drummond in that first 40 minutes was outstanding in conducting that first half performance. And I just think, unfortunately, the Ranfurly Shield, possibly hangover, and the multitude of injuries that forward pack had, they just weren't able to hang with the Canterbury team. So, didn't see that Taranaki result coming. I think Waikato, defensively, they grew an arm in a leg in their last 40 minutes. I think Aaron Cruden and even that drop goal to put in that position of two scores ended up being the difference. But yeah, a great way to be able to, I guess, start the quarterfinal stage with some upsets and some guys obviously going through as well.
Who would want to win the Ranfurly Shield when it completely destroys your NPC title chances?
I don't know. It feels just as good as winning a title, I think. But you've seen it throughout history, as I've mentioned previously. North Harbour in 2006, they finished second, went and played Otago at home and lost after winning the Shield as well in the last round. So it's a blessing and a curse at times, but it certainly has made a big impact down in Tasman where the quarterfinal was, and no doubt with Taranaki at the start of next year.
And a storm week as well. Lose the Shield, have a storm week.
It was brutal, man. And you could just see they'd had a lot of injuries and they just did limp into that quarterfinal, and it was just in the tight five is where they got hit the most. And as we know, the 5 most important positions on the field if you want to win rugby games. So you need your top kettle up front.
That's it. That and the halfback, most important positions on the field, obviously. Okay, so we'll get into plenty of that later on with the NPC and what happened with the Ranfurly Shield and how that led to what it led to. But first, the All Blacks head off this week. They're going off to Japan, and then they've got tests in England, Ireland, France and Italy. It's a big tour with not too big of a squad really, just 36 blokes. So how do you construct a tour like that, especially coming off the season that they've had, where there's been mixed results? How do you make sure that you make this work? Jipper, when you've been on these larger tours like they used to have more of back in the day, what was the foundation of making sure that thing didn't fall apart?
I think it's all the prep and planning with the leaders and management before you even leave. You sort of, it's one of those things, it's easier to remove stuff than to add. So you don't want it to look too light. You want to make sure you make best use of every minute. And I think you've really got to create, I suppose, a safe environment that you can be yourself, because if you're not yourself, then that's just added tension. You don't want that pressure tension. You want to be able to release that and have players, comfortable in their own skin and being able to contribute in whatever way that may be. I think it's becoming more and more achievable these days. I think back when touring was more weighted towards senior players and everyone else just sort of falling in behind. But whereas now I think there's a much more collective approach, understanding and giving different offerings. It's not just a one-stop shop. And I think it's just that dojo mentality. And I always like referencing that as like when you're in the dojo, you're on. And that's got to be your training when you're doing your clips and, working towards a test match. But then when you're off, you've got to, for some guys, it's really hard to switch off. Speaking from experience, captain intensity, love my footy. So actually, sometimes the biggest challenge is, what do you do in that downtime that doesn't suck up a lot of nervous energy and sort of weigh you down going into the next day of training?
Because Bryn, you're at work for 5 straight weeks. It must be quite hard to switch off in that way, knowing that in the morning you're waking up in the hotel room, the coaches will be downstairs, all of those kind of things.
I think finding that balance is really important because I think, if you're a new guy that's in the environment, you want to be able to go experience different countries or different parts of the world, and you're able to have those opportunities to do that. But I think sometimes if you're too excited to go and do things that are off the field you haven't experienced before and you haven't nailed your dojo analogy that kind of Jip use, then you probably get that wrong around the preparation. Then you aren't able to then go perform where you want to. So on the good side of it is that when you are on tour, you can actually spend a lot more time with players and being able to talk about things off the field, on the field, coffees, units, dinners, coffees after supper and that kind of stuff, and being able to, I guess, get that detail. So my time with the Crusaders, we'd go and have activity nights. We'd have, culture nights when we just wear a club jersey, which you've probably seen in New Zealand All Blacks or just teams around when they have those kind of day offs just before the day off. Being able to connect on a cultural level and being able to spend time with each other in a different country. So I think with all of that, it's the beauty around touring. And I think the good teams, they tour really well, but you're going to be judged on your performance, not, I guess, more so the touring element, which you do as a rugby player as well.
This off-the-field stuff, as far as the way that you connect with other players, like what were the best kind of off-field activities did you find that made that work?
Obviously there's guys that like golf, so that their day off is probably going to be golf. But when you look at team specific, there's been some awesome things like, as simple as Jonah Lomu rugby competition. Basically, find the best player of Jonah Lomu rugby at night. Poker nights, amazing races, things that sort of lighten the energy, but also split management between players and get that group-wide connection that allows everyone to let their guard down a little bit, so you get to know the deeper person, so that when the pressure's on, you're probably a little bit more understanding and respectful both ways. Whether the pressure's on you or you're putting the pressure on someone else, you've broken down the barriers to allow those conversations. I think you really need a core social committee that covers all bases, that that's going to get that buy-in and engagement. The most success, honestly, is I suppose, those sort of poker nights or elimination, because it creates banter, table tennis, elimination, or anything that involves a competition normally will be successful in a professional sporting team.
The raffle nights were always my favourite. Ross, obviously, before a day off, you'd have probably your 2 trainings and then you come in as a team activity, and whether it's your community, your committees that are in charge will go around, if it's in South Africa or Australia, to be able to gain gifts or sponsors, being able to get things to raffle off, and at the same time you can have a nice dinner together inside the team room. And whenever it's free, and you can only have to put in $2 to maybe get a Beats or a phone or anything like that, it adds a little bit more, energy when someone's winning, especially if it's a rookie. The best thing that I ever saw was someone getting a gym. I didn't win it. I think the money is really good. Had a couple of money ones where we had money in the kitty, but that was probably the best ones that I got. But I've seen some pearlers, like a full set gym that was able to be put into someone's gym. Was pretty cool to see after putting in maybe $10 worth of raffle tickets. So $10K worth within a sponsor. And they obviously shipped all the parts and it was be able to put into his gym. So yeah, it was a pretty cool one to get. So It's a pretty cool experience, obviously, what we're talking about.
You got a few?
I think the best I got was a G-Shock watch that didn't quite work. But I think full sets of golf clubs from TaylorMade fitted. Like Yeezys always used to go off, like Yeezy shoes. But to be honest, everyone was hanging out for that top prize, which was normally a hefty cash prize. Yeah. So the funniest is when someone's like, oh, I really want those Yeezys. And then they buy 50 tickets and then they're sitting there, and as it slowly whittles down and they haven't heard their name, and then the Yeezys go. Oh, it does create for a lot of hilarity when people are desperate for something. Nice.
MVPs of the social committee, anyone that you were like, man, that guy can run it?
And the ABs, DC and Conrad Smith it was pretty impressive. But I was young and new into that environment. But some of the prizes, I was like, holy dooly, be half my salary. But yeah, I think that they ran it really well. I think the All Blacks environment actually ran it really well. I think they started this whole concept, and then it was filtered down to super squads. But yeah, no, there's been a lot of guys that have run it really well. But it's normally the big dogs because I've got the best contacts.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
So they're working their sponsors and they're getting stuff on board.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sonny Bill was a good advocate for us to have. Tana Umanga was actually quite good when he was coach. So people with, sort of that profile normally run it.
Right, and then you could chuck it on.
Because if you're the rookie trying to do it and it's really going to fall flat. You're not going to get. You're struggling to get your own pairs of boots, let alone start handing out Yeezys. So
Oh, I think there's some good ones. Like Richie, I think Richie did some great stuff. My last couple of years, obviously, I agree with Jip in terms of the bigger dogs are the better. And I think he ended up selling on behalf of himself and his sponsorship 8 beds. Fully mattress beds, like king size beds within our group. So did that overseas, which was a part of the draw. But every single week would come in on a Monday, and the committees would come through and would offer, some deals through sponsorship.
I think it's also good, because they sort of want for nothing. Those big dogs, even if they win the raffle, they normally put it back in, and so they're not desperate for it themselves. So it's all about someone else.
Mean. It sounds like a good time.
But you look forward to it, especially on tour, because you're there is not a bad prize.
Yeah.
The worst would be a Yui Boom. How is that horrible?
Are the coaches in the management tour? Or just the players? Everyone's in.
Everyone's in.
Right.
No, she's the full shebang.
Yeah.
Because don't worry, coaches have got a lot of context as well.
Yeah.
You literally need to lean on everyone to make it worthwhile.
Damn. Now, I actually do seem to remember the Richie Mo'unga radio ads. A few times and thinking that's a random connection.
Well, that's it, mate. He's connected, aren't they? All the big dogs are connected and have those third-party deals. So I think Will Jordan goes pretty good in that space now with golf. So any form of golf attire or golf courses experiences, he tends to be the one to go to now these days.
Izzy Dag would have been all right, surely.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Daggy, yeah. And Daggy was so good around that. He was just so giving, because he was, just so well connected in everything and is very charismatic, and I guess can talk to people very well. So the amount of times that free golf rounds, free this, free that, free shoes for the boys, free clubs. He gave me a set of golf clubs, just obviously because he's sponsored by Callaway or whatever it was, TaylorMade or whatever it was at the time. So Daggy was actually really good as well. And Matt Todd back in the day as well, he went pretty well as well.
Oh yeah, Matt Todd. This is a sleeper.
Yeah, he just ran a good ship. Sorry, he wasn't good around the perks. He just ran a tight ship. So he was very good at getting the raffles and being able to get boys pick a few more raffles than they probably should. He was very good at being able to manipulate guys to get their money for the kitty, which I think in turn, at the end of the year, you want someone that can get as much money as you can for that end year function or just throughout the year.
He was all about turnover. Matt Todd.
Turnover, man.
Tell you what, Tonga Fussie's another sleeper. He was very good at it.
Oh, yeah.
He was undercover connected.
Yeah.
Especially in South Africa. Him and Sonny in South Africa, they were some of the better prizes going around.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I bet they actually had a massive following in the Cape, eh?
Well, yeah. Across South Africa, those two.
Yeah.
Are very well loved, so I forgot about that.
The other thing I think about making sure everyone's happy on tour has got to be the roomie. How does that work? Do you get a person for the entire time, or do they switch it up through the tour?
I think initially, it depends how long a squad's been together. At the start, you sort of, if there's a young guy, first tour, normally we'll put with the senior person in that position. So, say for me on my first Blues tour, I would obviously room with Kevy, for instance. But then there's a good chunk of people in the middle that have been around a long time that are used to each other's preparation and, are in the best moods or better moods. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and you want to give guys roomies they want to be with, because otherwise they just don't go back to their room. And if they're not comfortable sleeping, then, I've seen it as far as people pulling mattresses out of their room and putting it in their mate's room because they're not comfortable in the environment. So I think you have to nail that.
Yeah.
And even to the point that, some guys may want to have 3 into a room and because they play PlayStation or whatever. So it's actually just having that open conversation so the other person doesn't get offended.
Yeah.
That it's not actually about you. This is just where I'm comfortable and so forth. So I don't think there was a lot of thought put into it when I first started. It was literally, I suppose the senior guys got to choose how and where they slept, and then the rest was just you were with who you were with.
Right.
But whereas now, it's definitely you want to be with someone you're comfortable with.
Right. And Bryn,
snorers with snorers, for instance.
Snorers with snorers.
Yeah, because you don't imagine someone who's a heavy snorer and someone who's not. It's not going to go well.
Yeah, you got
but we know snorers once they're gone. So you put them together, you know.
But you can only discover that with experience, right?
Yeah, 100%. And how long the squad? Because like I know so a couple of times when I was in the New Zealand Barbarians, you know, like you don't know each other, and man, like snoring, hell's bells. My mate Jordan Tafua,
Oh, really?
he could go like the best.
Beast could snore.
Yeah. And I wasn't waking him. I can assure you that. I was not waking the beast. I kept very quiet.
Did you do a couple of stints with Jordan?
I used to live with Jordan back in the day, so I know firsthand. The bad thing is that we actually went in the same room. I could hear him from the other room. That's how bad and how loud he was. So that was Jordan. But Sione Mafaleo in North Harbour, just coming back. Getting some good stories around him and not being able to have him as a roommate. I think it's actually got to a point now with Noni. Sorry to say this about you, me old mate, but he has to have his own room. Because to come back around when it comes to JIP, you want to be able to sleep well and prepare well for your games. And it was just a lot easier for the club to be able to keep him by himself. So, and I think, to be honest, it actually kind of stays in it usually tends to be backs and backs. I find, backs and forwards. Very rarely, I think, in my time did I really have a forward as a roommate, I guess even at the Crusaders. So I think if you are on a long trip, like if we did a South African trip and stopped off at Perth and was like kind of like a 3-week tour, we probably found that we didn't keep the same roommate for the whole time. It was kind of just every single week, if we went into a different place, we'd have a different roommate. It'd be a different back usually. And so if it was a forward at one time, where I probably did a couple of times, but I had maybe Charlie Faumuina, but he was really good actually. Charlie Faumuina wasn't too bad of a snorer, but it tends to kind of be backs. I don't know if it was similar to like that back when you were playing AJ, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think
Forwards
naturally normally choose. But there were some obscure ones. I know like Michael Collins and Matt Duffy, you know, they got along with a lot of the forwards and stuff. So there would be almost like 4 of them. I think it was Cutter Pryor. Those guys would sort of rotate around. Normally backs with backs, forwards with forwards.
Your favourite of all time?
That's a good question. Probably Woody.
Tony Woodcock.
Yeah, because one, he knew I was a stress merchant, so he relaxed me because he wasn't stressed. So you know, so he sort of he helped me get through the week when I was a lot younger. So he was good, and it was just relaxing. Like it was, you know.
Well, just don't worry about it, mate.
Yeah.
You'll be right.
Yeah.
Close the book.
Yeah, no over talking either, you know. And Nick Mayhew probably. Nick Mayhew is another good one.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Jim, if you weren't going to say Nick Mayhew, geez, that would have been tough.
Kevy was probably the best. Now I remember my first pre-season game in the Blues. I think it was 2011 or 12, and Kevy was my roomie. And you always think the youngest should, probably be doing his washing. I came back and my washing was all done and folded on the end of my bed. And I was like, oh, who did this? Did someone come and collect it? He's like, no, mate, I did it. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But that's sort of the leader or person he was. But he was very good.
Do you have to do your own washing, or is there a person assigned?
Depends. It depends what level of tour you're on. But pre-season, yes.
Pre-season, you just...
But like ABs and Super Rugby, no. But NPC or pre-season, yes.
Yeah. And did Kevy press it? Was it all nicely ironed?
It was nicely folded, mate. It was pristine.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
The goat.
Yeah. I remember going down and calling my wife, going, oh my God, the most awkward thing just happened. Kevy's just done my washing. It should be the other way around.
How do you repay that favour?
Definitely did not leave my washing in sight, that's for sure. I made sure it was a lot more ordered than it was.
Yeah.
It was... we rotated after that. I understood that was the roomie way after that.
Right. So
he set a high standard. I was like, okay.
Okay. You arrive in that room and you go, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Can you do it Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
No, not really. It was just an unwritten rule. It would be 1 for 1.
Yeah.
But he showed the way. He didn't tell me this is how we're going to do it. He showed the way.
Yeah, right.
Like a good leader.
That sounds like Kevin Mialamu to a T.
Yeah. Very much so.
Bryn, you doing the washing for your roommates?
Yeah, I think similar to Jip, I just became more so if you're down in that kind of part of the because usually if you're doing Super Rugby, for example, or even test level, that kind of stuff, and you're with a roommate for a long period of time, a couple of weeks, say, or something like that, it's usually in the team room. So your washing is kind of given down in the team, and there's a big basket or a big kind of laundry bin that's usually, and you chuck it in. So if you are a good teammate or good roommate, you're pretty much, whether it is or not, you're just grabbing it, I guess, or taking you're taking your partners down at the same time. You're doing your washing?
No,
mate, you got any washing?
I'm sorry, mate.
Bring it down?
You cannot compare picking up folded and pressed washing to Kevin Mialamu, who actually picked up the wet rugby kit and did the washing, drying and folding. Old mate goes, yeah, look, if you're down where it's presented and handed back to you, of course you grab your roommate's washing. My gosh.
Sorry, mate. It must have just gone over my head. I didn't know that he actually took it, cleaned it himself. I thought he was just
did it, mate. He did the full job himself, mate.
Oh, well, you know what, man, you can't beat that. You don't have anybody like that these days. That's world class. So apologies for actually not listening to the
I know, I waffle on a bit. I waffle on.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'll tell you what, Kevy, unbelievable. But yeah, I think little
You think that's what happens at his house as well? What does Sam say?
He just switches
off.
off.
No, mate. It ain't. Oh, mate, come on. That's Kevin Mialamu. I don't know anybody in the world that's doing that these days. So.
No, I don't think that. Honestly, he would be in the 1%.
Yeah,
it's
1%.
Definitely throughout my whole career. It would definitely be in the 1%. It's a pretty big job to clean someone else's washing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Undies and all.
Oh, mate.
Yeah,
it's a massive job.
I'll tell you what, there is one thing you don't want to be if you are, a roomie. It's having that kind of stigma that you can't, like, you're messy or you don't do things that you should do as a roommate. And you kind of get a bad name. So you don't want things like that going around and saying, oh, he's messy, he doesn't do anything. He's just kind of hand up, not hand out. You just hate having that if you're if that's your kind of setup.
We don't last. Let's put it that way.
You don't last at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost want to not. Yeah, people, and honestly, nothing worse when you just see sometimes some guys, obviously you get the room cards when you get into the reception, and you get handed your envelope and you get the other person you see in the same room number, and you just like, you see the face just going, and you're just like, you're squinting your eyes and you're just kind of walking off saying, right, now let's go. You just hated to see that. If that was you, if you were the person getting that done to you, you just know that you're not a good roommate.
And so did you crack the whip? Like if you knew that you were copping a bad bloke?
Well, I think if you kind of get that feeling that someone's doing that and it's consistent, it's not just one person. You're like, oh, geez, maybe I need to pull my pants up here and stop being a bit of a belly. So, but yeah, to be honest, it depends how old you are, right? If you feel comfortable with the guy, you're like, mate, come on, do this or do this, like as you would like a mate. But I think if it's a little bit younger or someone that, obviously is a little bit more experienced, you tend to just stay in your lane or give them a nice little word here or there to try and get what you need out of a good roomie. You're
living out of your bag. So when you get into that room, are you emptying your bag? Are you putting it into drawers? Are you living straight out of your bag?
Everyone's different. And it depends how long you're there for.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily... Some will put it out and put your sort of training kit that you're going to use out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a personal thing. Some guys just stuff it in and hope for the best when they go to find what they need the next morning. Well, it's not even necessarily messy. It's like it's just all in there. It's not folded.
Yeah.
It's a complicated setup.
Yeah, well, and when you're doing that, there's stuff at the bottom. You get to the end of your trip and you haven't even touched it, kind of thing. You've just used the stuff at the top.
Oh, especially when you're with the ABs, you get so much kit. It's half of it's still in wrappers by the time you get home.
Yeah.
Because it is that thing. Like when your washing's done, it's just easier to grab the thing that's right there. You're not searching for a specific outfit unless it's training kit when you've got to wear specific things and you don't want to stuff that up because that leads to a healthy fine.
Ross, Jipper was bloody tidy. I'll give you the tip. Everything was.
I think everyone knows I was meticulous.
It was hung up. It was hung up in the obviously on the clothes rack, and you knew exactly where everything was. So Jipper was definitely not. He was a great traveller. Great to walk into his room with a cup of tea as well, nice and clean, smelled nice in his room.
My wife would be listening to this going, "Geez, when did that stop?" I did like things in order.
Yeah.
I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone.
Now, moving on from the tour, Carl Martin from Cornwall in the UK sent through an email talking about managing players all around the world and how it affects Test rugby. His question was, emailing from an English perspective, I was wondering if the New Zealand internationals have a season game cap, or is it just minutes here and there? Just wondering how many games Bryn as a halfback and Jipper as a hooker would expect to play each season in New Zealand. The Test series in July was an example of English players like Itoje being worn out. I fear they play way too many games throughout the season in the north when you add in the European Cup. If the teams up north played less games, we could have interesting international contests. So, other games like maybe Toulouse versus the Blues or whatever to open up opportunities in the season. Now, I kind of looked at the numbers here, and there is, within the English Premiership, a cap. 30 games, so that's including tests and club games. So there is something in place there, and I believe that came down from 32 a few years ago. As far as New Zealand's concerned, you get 14 games in Super Rugby Pacific. The All Blacks have got 14 test matches. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's too dissimilar a number.
No, it's not, and there's potentially some NPC games. For a full-time All Black, it's literally Super and All Blacks. So you're not going to reach that 30. Sometimes you're not going to play every test match, or you're not going to always start, so then that may decrease. Where, if you look at our structure, it's actually your All Blacks 15 or your Māori All Blacks that probably play the most games because they contribute a hell of a lot at NPC, contribute a hell of a lot at Super Rugby, and then they've got these little drop-in zones in the middle of the year and the other part of the year, but also there's a lot of transition from when the Māori All Blacks play mid-year, and then there's the All Blacks 15 at the end of the year. A lot of players play in both. So then they get to probably around that 32, 33. So then, from an individual basis, I think New Zealand has done it really well over a long period of time, and I know sometimes people get frustrated, but I think we've got into a really good space now where each individual's monitored to that specific individual and what they need. And sometimes it's not always games.
Yeah.
Honestly, the training week, actually relieving a bit of pressure during the training week. The game's the reward, remember? Like, the player wants to play. So it's how can we manage his year or so forth a little bit better that allows him to play as many games as possible.
So, Bryn, we're talking kilometres run, breakdowns hit, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, everything gets monitored. And if you're looking at Super Rugby, probably I'd say my last couple of years, it'd be around, you would never really go like you're going to go 10 games in a row. You'd probably get monitored. You go, 5 or 6. And if you've played predominantly a lot of minutes, then you'd probably get a rest week or something that coming off the bench or so. Like, it's not like you were going 80 minutes for like 17 weeks in a row. So I think more so the difficult thing is, I think what Jip touched on, is the guys that actually play the NPC, play the Super Rugby, and then play the New Zealand Māoris and then the All Black 15. That's kind of the toughest one, because from that, they actually don't get the bigger break like they do for the All Blacks. So if they end up playing those 32 games throughout the whole year, not actually being in the All Blacks, they tend to end up coming back probably a month or 6 weeks earlier than what the All Blacks arrive to when it comes to start the following year. So I think that's a little bit tougher for those guys in terms of the minutes and what they are given into and the time if they don't have. But very rarely, from when I finished there, you would feel like you're going into a batting round where you're not getting rested. So they'd be monitored and be able to see, would be based on performance. Or, some guys can just play 7 or 8 games. If you're 20, 21, sometimes you want to keep the pan hot and be able to let them just be able to go. But then there's obviously, they are young and you've got to be able to take care of them. And so it's a conversation that coaches, SNC, physios, medical, have all those kind of, those chats around it. So, yeah.
There's like 3 or 4 players that would go over 30.
Yeah.
Out of
the whole country,
250 or whatever we've got full-time professionals. So, and there is actually a group outside of the All Blacks end of year tour group that gets monitored. Like Bryn, use yourself as an example. You didn't have to go back to pre-season on day one. You were given many a summer off to come back fresh and so forth. So down here, it is very well monitored and looked after. And the one thing that I think's really sharpened the focus of it is just being specific to the individual, because what an Ash Dixon may need, a George Bell doesn't. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like just age, training age, so forth. Ash can turn up probably the week of round 1, he'll deliver for you because he's got so many years under his belt. Whereas George Bell, although he's an amazing player, he may need some lead-in time and a bit of bulk. He wants to put a bit of bulk on or so forth. So it just depends. Potentially is a problem up in the north, because especially if you look at the French top 14, there's a hell of a lot of games. There's test match demands.
There's European Championship.
And international rugby players, and I know Conrad Smith's doing a lot of work and trying to get a game-wide max number of games played to try and manage the situation so that players can be fresh and available, still fulfil their club demands, but also get that opportunity to play international rugby.
And is that going to be as complex as breaking down training sessions and all those things as well? Because
I think in time, but I think, that's not going to be possible to monitor, so that's why they're trying to find a happy medium together.
Thank you very much for your question there, Karl, and please email us on Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz for the chance to get one of these players' sports balls. Another question came through from Todd Spencer on a slightly different topic, but an interesting question here. The most contentious stats question my mates and I argue about is whether or not it's better to kick penalty ball into the corner and go for a line out, or to take the shot at goal for the 3 points. Do you guys have any insights? Are rugby teams making these decisions based on statistics, or they're making it on analytics or intuition?
All three. As complex as that sounds. I've said it on here a lot of the times when I was captain, whether it's super level or NPC, you get with the coaching group, you get with the leaders, okay, what's our plan? What are the trends this side shows? Okay, they leak points early. Okay, well, we're going to go to the corner early. They're really staunch in that first half. Take points when we can, and let's back our fitness to come over. Whatever it is, like you've got access to all of that. So then going into the game, you always back that plan. Only if things change. Like that's an assumption, that you believe in, but you still got to confirm on the night and understand that sometimes the trend doesn't happen. So discuss what does that plan be, and that's when you sort of see conversations happen out on the field, because you're going, okay, say it's a scrum, we're dominating them up front, we're this close to getting a yellow card, this loose head's been worn 3 times, let's just have the scrum, let's get the yellow card, then we'll still get our 3 points if we want to go for it, but if we've got the yellow card in, we can probably go to the corner or go back to a scrum. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So you can't be fixed, but you've got to have a plan. If that makes sense. And you've got to utilise that all before the game, but then the confirmation is the key bit. If you just go in on autopilot and think we'll just stick to that, then you're not going to be successful, that often, because it's a game of rugby, it changes so much.
And Bryn, that's part of the weekly checklist, is it? As you go through the things that you're doing as you prepare for each team each week, that is just one of those things. Done.
For leaders.
Yeah, for leaders. But definitely for leaders. So you'll know, the trends of the teams, or possibly even the ref, what their trends are and what they might be looking for in certain situations. But yeah, I think Jip's right. Obviously having a plan to then be prepared for when you are in those situations. But when you're a code head and like Jip and myself, like you get a really good feel. And I think the real good captains have a real good understanding and feel how the game's going. Like Jip talked around when it came to the yellow card. Well, they've got a good scrum, but for whatever reason, they're actually just showing that they're giving up 2 penalties, or their prop looks like he's injured. So let's just keep it on with them, knowing that there could be a penalty try, a yellow card, and then that's 10 minutes into a game. We're like, man, we're on top of them here. Or it might be feeling like, right, man, we've batted a line for like 10 minutes here. We feel like we've got them, but they're just not breaking. But you know what? Let's take the 3 points and put it out to 8 points. We're still getting that scoreboard pressure. They might feel like it's a little win, but at the same time, they've still got to score two ways of scoring. And so I feel the best captains, they've just have got really good feel for it. And sometimes when you're playing against someone that has that good feel for the game, and a captain is saying like, right, we could go for 3 here and we've defended really well, but you know what? We're going to go to the corner because we know this team's really weak and we feel like we can get them. And sometimes when I feel a captain will go for the 3 when they've got all this momentum and they take the 3, it's just like, it's a massive release. So you know what? That's a massive win for us right here. And the boys get confidence from that. So like I say, the captains have that really good feel. Yes, you have a plan. Preparation side, I think what Jip did really well in his time when he was a captain, was very well prepared around, especially with our goal kickers, around these parts of the field, we're going to take points. But at the same time, if he felt that we could get them in some other parts of the game, we would move away from that because we felt like we could score points or dictate it with yellow cards or putting them under pressure in certain situations. And
I think it's being self-aware of your own side. So like, I know for a fact, like if we were struggling to exit, taking 3 was actually more vulnerable, that it could lead to 7 for us under our sticks. So it was like, okay, well, let's just keep the pressure on down here because this is where we're more comfortable and we can build momentum. Even if we didn't come away with points, it was just a better mental state for a group to be in. So that exit mindset and making sure someone is leading that, because normally your 10-year game driver is kicking the goal, and you don't really want your captain having another role, so it's having a key other leader to own and understand that exit, and he may come up to the captain and go, man, our exits, that's 3 we've butchered, and it's actually cost us 10 points. I think we've got to stay down here because we're more than likely going to end up with more points. And those sorts of conversations on the run are really important, but you've got to empower those guys during the week to know that it's theirs to own, so it's their responsibility to share the information that they're feeling, so it's not just one person having to feel everything.
It sounds like it's a hell of a checklist for a captain. Like, did you literally have like a spreadsheet or a mark in the book where you're like, have I done that this week?
I was pretty religious in planning my week on Sunday nights, knowing exactly where I was going to do things, and knowing what meetings you needed to bring these things up at. But no, it wasn't like you had a checklist of what to do. It was more, it was already in our schedule, like Monday to Sunday set every week, so where and what you need to have completed by that time. Yeah.
To go on from there, like good captains just know, like I think there's the preparation element, but I think people that know rugby and know the ins and outs and are really, I guess, have that pure kind of love for it, they tend to make the really good decisions as well. Like I think that's what I find. Like I know Jip, when he's making a decision when he was captaining me, I didn't have to think about it. Even though we had the preparation plan and everything, I knew that he's got a great feel for the game. But then when sometimes I've had captains where they're probably not to that extent, where they've been bestowed on this appointment of being captain, but their traits aren't leadership qualities. They've been given it through their actions, right? And so then when they're making a decision, it's like, that's probably the wrong decision. But they're your captain, you back them from that. But yeah, I just feel, someone that really knows the game and is really passionate and understanding situationally around football, like Jip. Sorry, Jip, I'm giving you a lot of plugs here, mate.
Cheers.
Yeah,
thanks,
you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm making though, Ross. Like they make the decisions, probably 9 out of 10. Where some captains or some bad ones that don't have those understanding and leadership qualities make it, 5 out of 10.
But that's why you got to empower, because, yes, I'm anal, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead into the right, decision. So you've got to have
execution of that decision.
Yeah, and you've got to have the group around you. And sometimes, as a captain, I might not be playing well, so it's a complex beast. But I think what Bryn just said there is massive. Is you can do all the prep, but on game day, you've got to trust your gut.
So maintaining confidence in your decision making.
100%.
And is that's?
Well, you think if you're in a team and your captain's looking up to the coaches, waiting for the tee to run out, or what are you thinking?
But that's what Sia Khaleesi does all the time. Like the box, they got lights up there saying, do this, do that, do the other thing.
They would have discussed that. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you're in a team and you're not part of that leadership meeting, you don't know that's a thing.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? That guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So it creates a little bit of distrust. So you've just got to make sure that everyone's in on the plan if there's a little bit of that. But if not, then you've got to show real confidence and decisiveness so that everyone turns up to that next job ready to go and not surprised or edgy or so forth.
That's really interesting. So, Todd, there's the answer to your question. We'll send you the Players Sports Ball this week. We'll be in touch to get you to send through your details, and anybody else, please email us, Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz. And please take up our offer. You'll see on the screen here a QR code, which will take you to playersports.co.nz, and a code there, RugbyPod20, which will give you a 20% discount on all Blacks merch, boots and balls. So please go there, enjoy that from our friends at Players Sports who look after us week on week. So let's move on now through to the Black Ferns. They played France. Bryn, it was a far better performance against France. A little late for winning the championship, but does that leave you with hope looking forward to a World Cup that starts in August next year?
Oh, I definitely think hope. Geez, I think considering that they lost to the French last time they played them, and I think it was the manner and the way they did it. Now, I think, weather conditions made it a little bit easy in terms of being a dry ball and on a hard surface, which was great to be able to see our Black Fern girls to be able to use their skill set. But look, I really enjoyed watching their quick tempo. Like if you look at the first 2 tries that they did score, they were able to play that upbeat tempo to keep the French on the back foot and be able to score tries from that to get to their head start. And then, you look at probably the set piece play, their scrum strikes that they were able to score with Vahakolo, 1 try. You're talking around scoring tries and set pieces, really hard to do at international level. They were able to do that in that French game. And I thought they'd line out more variety as well, Jip, to be able to try and, manipulate the French to go one way and then go the other way. And then lastly, I just thought the physicality on both sides of the ball was brutal. Through that result, they would have to be pretty happy and knowing that they can, if they do get it right, they can beat a team like the French and hopefully the English in a few months' time.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bryn. I think their creativity off set piece, particularly line out, even their little bunter plays, some going open, some going back down the short side, didn't necessarily lead to tries, but it actually corralled the French defence in, which freed up on the edge to score tries with ease. The one thing I liked at times is just that direct nature and the simplicity of their attack. So I'm a big athlete, I'm going through you. Olsen Baker, bang, I'm going over the top of you, and that quick ball leads to someone else, bang, over the top. And then, as I say, it corralled the defence in, and then it was just simple hands to the edge try, versus make a line break and then just throw a 50-50. If they can get that 50-50 out of their game, they're going to put teams away, like massively. Like they're creating so many opportunities, like so many, and it's the no-look pass, or it's the, I think there was one where they tried to turn and pop it up and it knocks on, and the damage is done. You're in behind the defensive line. Just be patient, that one more ruck mentality. If you have not won the collision, you can't sight your target, or there's bodies everywhere, just one more ruck. And because they show, as athletes, they can just go straight over the top of teams and play to your strengths. Like the Blues won a title on it. They said, okay, we're the biggest, this is, everyone knew what was coming. And I think the Black Ferns need to look at that game and go, okay, when things went well, we were just direct, ruthless in our kings, not looking for tips. But then when the tips opened up, they did that, but then also it was their reaction of those players getting in behind and being ruthless on those cleans. So simplicity in attack. Defence was much better, but the 2 tries, and I think this is their next step, because I think they definitely looked to try and spread the field, and there's only that one crossfield kick that they knocked on over the line that potentially could have been taken advantage of, but they weren't beaten on the edge as we've seen in previous, is that next job mentality. So when that the first try, the French player, like it's gone open, there's heaps of bodies there, and then she decides to cut back down, those players switched off, and that's all it takes at that level, is just to switch off for that second. You've always got to think, okay, the ball's gone that way, I'm going to press up and then I'm going to connect in here, rather than trying to look to run round a breakdown. Press up, connect in, and if they'd done that, they would have cleaned her up. It would have been a brutal set of defence. They probably would have got a turnover. So it's similar things like that even from that scrum, their second try, everyone knew their role was to get round that corner, but sometimes you've got to read it. Okay, that speed of the ball's coming at a good speed. Yes, I'm supposed to get round the corner, but I just can't leave that hole there. So I'm going to plug rock and I'm going to shut this down. And then you hope the person behind you goes, okay, that's a smart decision. I'm going to go fill their role. That will come over time, no doubt, but because everyone just folded, I don't know who it was, but, they got in there late and they were low and they got them, but it was just too easy.
Yeah.
So you've got to have that ability and that nous to go, okay, that ruck, we've got no hunter in there. We're a metre from our line. We need to tighten up, because they weren't looking to pass it. It was always going to come through. But again, it was against the grain, and it's just that massive improvement defensively, but just that, that focus on, okay, that job's done, what's next? And not having that switch off, or that focus to go, that's a quick ruck, I need to do that. Other than that, it was a massive shift. And honestly, their attack is so good, but it's just they're their own worst enemies for a lot of it. And we saw that in the other 2 games, whereas this game, when they were direct and ruthless in nature, man, there's no stopping them.
We've talked a lot about their kicking game. Do you feel like that was more on point this time, outside of the goal kicking, the infield kicking?
It needs to be improved. What I do like in having Hannah King at 10, she is a person that can kick the ball quite nicely. And I think we saw even in that second half, it was very early in the second half, just after halftime, she put that kick nice and long to be able to make it go inside the French's 22. So, and she's an attacking kick as well. So I think we have seen an evolution of the attacking kicks that I think we have seen from the Black Ferns. We've seen Brunt do a lot of little grubbers of my Duplessis, little chips in behind. So I think they definitely are evolving when it comes to the attacking and kicking game, crossfield kicks as well. But I think exit zone is probably one area that they probably do need to work on in terms of trying to get out of their half and relieve that pressure, because when we do see if that ball does go off a kickoff, that it is deep, and they're then trying to attack from their own half, it's going to lead to be able to do knock-ons, breakdown turnovers. It's really hard to be able to try and get out of their half. So I think that's probably one area Mike Delaney and co. and that Black Ferns coaching staff need to get better around their kicking from getting from exits. And I think, Maya Joseph is actually going to be very good in terms of the kicking game. So it's how can we be able to use her kicking game to try and exit or being able to use the ball to get inside the half. Because when she did come on, pretty much off turnover or any kind of space that she saw with one in the backfield, she was kicking them long straight away to be able to get 2, 3, 4 bounces to then be able to get into the French's half from that. So I think it's the ingredients are all there. I just think there just needs to be a continuation of the length of the kicks, and I guess the times of when we are doing it, especially in that exit zone, because if we are going to play England in a World Cup final, we can't get out of our exit zone. We know that they're going to go to a line-out maul. Once they get into a line-out maul, it adds a lot more pressure to defend that, and then they can be able to get into our 22, and they can use their big forwards like the South Africans do, or like we did, like Jip alluded to when describing our forwards bullying them and going through the French on the weekend.
Just over 300 days to go until this World Cup. I mean, they're in a similar position, I suppose, being a long way behind England going into the last one. This time they don't have home field advantage. This time it's going to be slightly tougher, isn't it? So what they've learned on tour, I suppose, is going to be massive for them in an away World Cup.
I think they'll take a lot of confidence from that game against the French. That was a pretty sharp outing. And I know I just nitpicked at a couple of things, but if they are to beat England, I believe those areas of just staying on and reading the play as it comes versus structure and system. You've got to be able to override system with what you see and how the game's going. If they can grow that element with the exiting, I don't know, the exiting is how can they get creative is probably what I'm thinking. Like the old adage of just passing the ball back and trying to block, people that are charging it down. I'm just not sure. We've spoken about it in the male game a bit. Is there someone else you can bail out to that you shape to look like Hannah's kicking, but then she just frees up? Someone out there, and then they kick it from edge, or they kick it, from centre, whoever it may be. Is there just somewhere they can create a little bit of indecisiveness that will allow Hannah to clear? So then you've got both options. What they don't have at the moment is they know it's either 9 or 10. And from a defensive point of view, you're just going to flood that channel. So it may be even a bailout that they run. Not that I think they need any more excuses to run from depth, but it may be that. Like somehow they've got to get teams analysing their exit game and going, okay, there's 2 or 3 things they can do here, but it's the same picture. What's it going to do, and what are we banking on? And then you're getting yourself in the race. Yeah, right. And do they have the right cattle on the field, do you think? Yeah, look, absolutely. Like, you know that, like, as I said, like, when they're on and they're playing, like, it's creating a lot of selection headaches as well. Like, there's players that are performing, that are putting pressure on, but that's good for the squad. You know that there will be some 7 players that come across as well, and they've won gold medal after gold medal, and you know that that's going to add a hell of a lot to that group as well. But this current group can take a lot of pride from that performance. That was a hell of a way to answer back. Everyone predicted them to lose that test, and they turned up and dominated it.
Yeah, it was very, very strong. Speaking of domination, Canterbury, we touched on it earlier. Goodness me, against Tasman. Now, they are going into play Bay of Plenty, who, for me, are like the sleeper team of the NPC. 3 out of the last 5 semi-finals, and no one talks about them, really. No one's like, this is a team to beat.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just it's, like Hawke's Bay nearly did it to them again. I suppose they just haven't had that clinical finals performance, so people do forget about it a little bit. So I feel they've got over that hurdle with that tight victory. And a big part of Canterbury's turnaround has been some key All Blacks coming back, but also some key bodies coming back. It's going to be a doozy. Like, Bay of Plenty at home, they've got a really strong squad, they've got a team playing well. But if Canterbury don't go back to the issues they had at scrum time and line-out time previous to Sam Derry and George Bell and Newell coming back, and they can still dominate in that set piece area and get that front foot ball, we know that the Ferraris are ready to go. They showed that on the weekend. They are ready to rock and roll. And I thought Mitch Drummond was a very big in. He was exceptional in that first 40, and I'm glad they hooked him to get him right for this week, because he was massive, and that 1-2 punch with Willie Hines was good. But it all came off that platform, and it allowed Billy Harmon to get back to his best. Man, he was just incredible. So that tight five, whatever the makeup or whatever it looks like, they need to, I think it's type 5 versus type 5, and I'm not making a joke here, but I'm serious. That type 5 and that dominance and the set piece, and then I think, that battle with the Lucy's, the breakdown will take care of itself.
But without probably Bell, without Newell, without Darry, that's 3 of your type 5 and 3 international.
So that's what I'm saying.
That's good.
It was a big factor in that one.
Yeah.
A massive factor.
Brenna, these two teams haven't played each other this year, but from your feeling from having played within this competition?
Yeah, look, I think the injuries when we played Canterbury was a massive factor in why we beat them. So I think Jip's really right. I look at the squad and I look at the time when we played Canterbury. Physicality was the biggest thing that we touched on. If you try and be physical and you can get over the advantage line, they've got the Ferraris out on the backs, which we probably had, if you look at this in the terms of what we had, and we were able to put them under a lot of pressure due to the fact that we had those boys on the outside. But our type 5 and our 8 collectively just dominated Canterbury when they got their result. So obviously Marty Burke has come out and gave it pretty early on after that game that he tested their players, and they've come back with flying colours with the All Blacks boys filtering in. But I think there's enough there once they do leave. They've got guys like Brady McAllister coming back. You've got Willie Hines, Mitchell Drummond, who I think will be massive in terms of that kind of finals footy and what that can be done. But at the same time, when we did play Bay of Plenty in the Domain, it's a different beast. It honestly is a fortress in terms of playing at Tauranga. They get up for their games there, and obviously Hawke's Bay probably thinks they lost that game, but they were able to still get that result. I think with being at home is a big part of that, but the physicality around the breakdown, and we talk about it a lot on this podcast. But if Canterbury aren't on in that stage, I can see Bay of Plenty winning that. But I think very similar to Jim. I hate to be on the fence, but depending on who's going to be playing, especially tight head with that last 20, who's going to be coming on in the last 20, it'll be pretty important. But if I had to pick one, I would pick Canterbury, with the fact that Mitchell Drummond, Willie Hines are back, and that forward pack. It seems like they've turned a corner post that result against us.
Bryn, what about Wellington Waikato? How do you see that playing?
Man, I was impressed with Waikato. Geez, I was impressed with them. Their defense, like Taranaki threw a lot of them in that last 40. They just threw them at the kitchen sink of them, kept coming them, kept going out the back, and they did enough to be able to hold on and just showed a lot of care, I thought, in that quarterfinal. And I think with Aaron Cruden, I'm not too sure if he's going to be injured, but him coming back into an environment like that, coming back into that team at this stage of the competition is huge. And I know he got a shoulder injury at the back end of the game, so I'm not too sure. But I think if he plays, he gives them a really good opportunity to get the result. But I think Wellington, with how they are playing, and I know they obviously don't have the All Black boys there, but it's not as big as it is with the Canterbury side. But I think Wellington will just pick Waikato. I think it'll be a little bit too hard for them to back up that performance against the Taranaki only a week ago.
I think Cruden needs a jab like Cooper Cronk. I think if he's not there, it's a big mountain to climb. Spoke to Cook Savage and a number of times to do the drop goal, and he said in the after-match interview that if I didn't have Koro, as he called him, as an Aaron Cruden, telling me for the second time to take a droppie, I probably wouldn't have done it. Yeah. So just that game smart, that game management is absolutely crucial. Where Wellington, when they have struggled, again, it's that set piece. They've had a lot of injuries in that type 5. It hasn't gone all their way. They are slowly coming back, but obviously with Almour leaving, it makes it a little bit more challenging, because he was a pretty big part of their result on the weekend. So I think it'll be another close one. I think Wellington at home though, Luke Jacobson just dominated too much, and they snuck through as well. Without him there, just being that nuisance at the breakdown that he was, a complete and utter nuisance, I think Wellington, Duplessis, Creefy back, will get that one.
Right. They've lost a few in the backs. Perenara, Proctor, Love, but they do have depth.
They've shown enough. There's a lot of... I actually think it's beneficial for Wellington to have a break. Those guys have played a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
And actually just having that week off or having less minutes is actually setting them up really well for a semi.
So for you, it's a Wellington-Canterbury final in Wellington?
Oh, give me a week. Based on not seeing teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and for you, Brynner?
Wellington, Canterbury.
Yeah. Thank you once again for joining us here on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Get in touch, Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz, or get into the YouTube comments and we'll do our best to answer your questions as we look ahead to the big late October, November window of test matches to come next week. So thank you very much for watching and supporting the show. Thanks to Jipper, thanks to Bryn down in the Christchurch studio today. And also thank you to all of the studio crew and everyone else here at Sky who helps put this show together. So appreciate you all coming along for the show. Kia pai te wiki. See you next week.